Hello again, everyone. Today we are going to be reading chapters 17 and 18 in Bambi. Thanks for joining us here at the Caribou Public Library. This is our chapter book story time, and I am Miss Erin. All right, so Bambi is written by Felix Sultan, illustrated by Gerard Goodnow. Chapter 17. One day, Marena appeared again. She was almost full grown, the winter that Gobo disappeared, but she had hardly ever been seen since, for she lived alone, going her own ways. She had stayed slender and looked quite young, but she was quiet and serious, and gentler than any of the others. She had heard from the squirrel and the jay, the magpie and the thrushes and pheasants, that Gobo had returned from his wonderful adventures. So she came back to see him. Gobo's mother was very proud and happy over her visit. Gobo's mother had grown rather proud of her good fortune. She was delighted to hear the whole forest talking about her son. She basked in his glory and wanted everybody to know that her Gobo was the cleverest, ablest, and best deer living. "What do you think of him, Marena?" she exclaimed. "What do you think of our Gobo?" She didn't wait for an answer, but went on. "Do you remember how old Netla said he wasn't worth much because he shivered a little in the cold? Do you remember how she prophesied that he'd be nothing but a care to me?" "Well," Marena answered, "you've had plenty of worry over Gobo." "But that's all over with now," his mother exclaimed. She wondered how people could still remember such things. Here's a picture. I'm sorry for poor old Netla. What a pity she couldn't live to see what my Gobo's become." "Yes, poor old Netla," said Marena softly. "It's too bad about her." Gobo liked to hear his mother praise him that way. It pleased him. He stood around and basked as happily in her praises as in the sunshine. Even the old prince came to see Gobo, his mother told Marena. She whispered it as though it were something solemn and mysterious. He never let anyone so much as get a glimpse of him before, but he came on account of Gobo. "Why did he call me a poor thing?" Gobo broke in a discontented tone. I'd like to know what he meant by that." "Don't think about it," his mother said to comfort him. "He's old and strange." But at last Gobo meant to ease his mind. "All day long it keeps running through my head," he said. "Poor thing. I'm not a poor thing. I'm very lucky. I've seen more and been through more than all the rest of you put together. I've seen more of the world and I know more about life than anyone in the forest. What do you think, Marena?" "Yes," she said, "no one can deny that." From then on, Marena and Gobo were always together. Chapter 18. Bambi went to look for the old stag. He roamed around all night long. He wandered until the sun rose and dawn found him on unbeaten trails without Feline. He was still drawn to Feline at times. At times he loved her just as much as ever. Then he liked to roam about with her, to listen to her chatter, to browse with her on the meadow or at the edge of the thicket. But she no longer satisfied him completely. Before, when he was with Feline, he hardly ever remembered his meetings with the old stag, and when he did, it was only casually. Now he looked for him and felt an inexplicable desire driving him to find him. He only thought of Feline between whiles. He could always be with her if he wanted to. He did not much care to stay with the others. Gobo or Aunt Enna he avoided when he could. The words of the old stag that he had let fall about Gobo kept ringing in Bambi's ears. They made a peculiarly deep impression on him. Gobo had affected him strangely from the very first day of his return. Bambi didn't know why, but there was something painful to him in Gobo's bearing. Bambi was ashamed of Gobo without knowing why, and he was afraid for him, again, without knowing why. Whenever he was together with his harmless, vain, self-conscious, and self-satisfied Gobo, the words kept running through his head. Poor thing. He couldn't get rid of them. But one dark night, when Bambi had again delighted the screech-owl by assuring him how badly he was frightened, it suddenly occurred to him to ask, "Do you happen to know where the old stag is now?" The screech-owl answered with his cooing voice that he didn't have the least idea in the world, but Bambi perceived that he simply didn't want to tell. "No," he said, "I don't believe you. You're too clever. You know everything that's happening in the forest. You certainly must know where the old stag is hiding." The screech-owl, who was all fluffed up, smoothed his feathers against his body and made himself small. "Of course I know," he cooed still more softly, "but I oughtn't to tell you. I really oughtn't." Bambi began to plead. "I won't give you away," he said. "How could I when I respect you so much?" The owl became a lovely, soft, gray-brown ball again and rolled his big, cunning eyes a little as he always did when he felt in a good humor. "So you really do respect me?" he asked. "And why, pray?" Bambi did not hesitate. "Because you are so wise," he said sincerely, "and so good-natured and friendly besides. And because you're so clever at frightening people. It's so very clever to frighten people. So very, very clever. I wish I could do it. It would be a great help to me." The screech-owl had sunk his bill into his downy breast and was happy. "Well," he said, "I know that the old stag would be glad to see you." "Do you really think so?" said Bambi, while his heart began to beat faster for joy. Here they are, the owl flying with Bambi. "Oh, yes, I'm sure of it," the owl answered. "He'll be glad to see you, and I think I can venture to tell you where he is now." He laid his feathers close to his body and suddenly grew thin again. "Do you know the deep ditch where the willows stand?" Bambi nodded yes. "Do you know the young oak thicket on the farther side?" "No," Bambi confessed. "I've never been on the farther side." "Well, listen carefully then," the owl whispered. "There's an oak thicket on the far side. Go through that. Then there are bushes, hazel and silver poplar, thorn and shade bush. In the midst of them is an old uprooted beech. You'll have to hunt for it. It's not so easy to see from your height as it is from the air. You'll find him under the trunk, but don't tell him that I told you." "Under the trunk?" said Bambi. "Yes," the screech-owl laughed. "There's a hollow in the ground there. The trunk lies right across it, and he sleeps under the trunk." "Thank you," said Bambi sincerely. "I don't know if I can find it, but I'm very grateful anyhow." He ran quickly away. The screech-owl flew noiselessly after him and began to hoot right beside him. "Oi, oi!" Bambi shrank together. "Did I frighten you?" asked the owl. "Yes," he stammered, and that time he told the truth. The owl cooed with satisfaction and said, "I only wanted to remind you again. Don't tell him I told you." "Of course not," Bambi assured him, and ran on. When Bambi reached the ditch, the old stag rose before him out of the pitch-black night so noiselessly and suddenly that Bambi drew back in terror. "I'm no longer where you were going to look for me," said the stag. Bambi was silent. "What is it that you want?" asked the stag. "Nothing," Bambi stammered. "Nothing, excuse me, nothing at all." After a while, the old stag spoke, and his voice sounded gentle. "This isn't the first time you've been looking for me," he said. He waited. Bambi did not answer. The old stag went on. "Yesterday you passed close by me twice, and again this morning, very close." "Why," said Bambi, gathering courage, "why did you say that about Gobo?" "Do you think I was wrong?" "No," cried Bambi sorrowfully. "No, I feel that you were right." The old stag gave a barely perceptible nod, and his eyes rested on Bambi more kindly than ever before. "Why?" Bambi said. "I don't understand it." "It's enough that you feel it. You will understand it later," the old stag said. Goodbye. And that's it. The end of chapter 18. We'll continue on next time. Hope you guys are enjoying the story, and we'll see you then. Bye for now.